Hey everybody, welcome back. Last time on the Badass Podcasting and Audio video series, we talked about compressors and we learned how to use the different controls on a compressor, what they do, and what compression is generally. Now that's half the battle. Now, when I record my podcast, I have the ability to set a compressor up right on my input. So as the mic comes into the system and is feeding signal to my preamp, and obviously to my computer, it's being compressed here so that I don't accidentally go too far over without catching it. Because the last thing you want to do when you're recording is overdrive your preamp and have it distort. That sound can't be cleaned up. You basically have to do it again. So that's why I have compressors on the chain going in. However, you don't have to do that. Once you've recorded, it's perfectly acceptable. Like this recording you're about to hear here was recorded on a Tascam DR40 with no compression whatsoever. So I just made sure that the signal wasn't going in too loud, because if any of these signals hit the ceiling here, that would distort and once again would make for a nasty sound that you can't fix even with the best compressor. So just be careful with your recordings that you don't, there's usually like a red light that goes off or a clip light or clip LED that goes off. You don't want that to happen. So in any event, let's assume that whether you've recorded with compression or without, you've got some kind of signal and you want to use a compressor to tidy it up. Remember, the idea is to take the high peaks and make them lower and to take the low parts and make them louder, just to equalize the signal so that things are more or less the same. Now, you never want to overdo it. So no matter which compressor I show you, I want you to shoot for having the gain reduction meter somewhere between 2 and 3, worst case 5 decibels of gain reduction. And that's not all the time, but 5 would be like a peak, right? When something really big comes up. First, I'm going to show you two compressors that I use a lot. These are both part of the Universal Audio product line. So if you don't have the Universal Audio hardware, there's really nothing that exactly replaces these. There are some emulations, but I don't love too many of them, but there's tons of stuff on the market that is as good or in some cases better. So we'll use these as a reference standard so you can hear what quote unquote the best of the best sound like. Let's see what you think. The first one is a model of something called the Fairchild compressor. Now, all the ones we're going to use today are modeled after some kind of classic hardware because the classic hardware sounds good. They were simple architectures, they sounded beautiful, and they added some tone or character. And that's what we want to do. We want to take your beautiful voice, your beautiful recording, and add some real tone and character to it. And a compressor is a great way to do that. And that way, a compressor is a little bit like an equalizer because it does shape the frequencies a bit as it is shaping the volume. Let's hear some examples. We'll start with the Fairchild, the Universal Audio Fairchild. First without, and then when you see this blue light come on, you know that the plug-in is in. Here we go. Hello, everybody. Chris Williams here. I am recording a podcast today using no expensive tools, no Universal Audio interfaces, nothing but a nice microphone and a Tascam DR40. So again, watch the meters. You can see that it's going between, in this case, 1 and 2 decibels of gain reduction, and it's adding a nice round tone, but it's also really bringing the voice to the front. It sounds super present and sharp. It's got a nice mid-range boost, but it's really smooth. It's not overly aggressive, but it's definitely more present. That's a beautiful sounding compressor. Let's go to another one called the Universal Audio, in this case LA2A, which is a really simple compressor to use. It's got 2 knobs. How much do you want me to squish or gain reduction? And then how much do you want me to increase the overall volume? Let's take a listen. Hello, everybody. Chris Williams here. I am recording a podcast today using no expensive tools, no Universal Audio interfaces, nothing but a nice microphone and a Tascam DR. Another great character compressor. This one is a little, I feel like the low mids are a little more accentuated, but the lows are not. So it's not as round and boomy, and it's got an aggressive character, and it's perhaps a little more grainy. It's a little more gritty. It's not as polite as the Fairchild. Not as transparent. You can definitely hear this working a little bit more. All right, now here's an interesting one. I've mentioned this one in the past. This is a very inexpensive compressor, and it's got three models. It's got a Fairchild emulation called the Mark I. It has an LA2A emulation called the Mark III, and it has something called an 1176 emulation, which is a VCA style compressor called the Mark II. We're going to listen to all of them first, starting with the Mark I. Hello, everybody. Chris Williams here. I am recording a podcast today using no expensive tools, no universal audio interfaces, nothing but a nice microphone and a task. So with 3 to 4 dB of gain reduction, it has that nice round character and a little more presence. It may not be as smooth and as refined as the original Fairchild, but it's a pretty good attempt. And I have these settings set up to basically mimic what I had set up in the Fairchild. So they should be quite similar. Let's try the Mark III. The Mark III is the LA2A emulation. Have a listen without. Hello, everybody. Chris Williams here. I am recording a podcast today using no expensive tools, no universal audio interfaces, nothing but a nice microphone and a Tascam DR40 portable field recorder. So here again, it's not quite the same as the universal audio, but it does a good job of mimicking that somewhat nasal and a little more aggressive character. So this would be a really great choice for a vocal as well. The Mark II is an emulation of that 1176 VCA style compressor, and I have set it up to emulate something that I would use on my voice. Again, about 3, maximum 5 on the peaks decibels of gain reduction. Let's listen without first. Hello, everybody. Chris Williams here. I am recording a podcast today using no expensive tools, no universal audio interfaces, nothing but a nice microphone and a Tascam DR40 portable field recorder. This thing's loaded up with 3 AA batteries, and that's it. Somewhat neutral. I've never been a huge fan of the 1176 for spoken word vocals, but this would certainly be a nice choice. You know what? You can barely hear it working. It does its job. That's all you care about. So definitely check out the MJUC by Klanghelm. This is an excellent choice, and I think it sells for, I want to say it's around the $50 to $70 range, depending on when you get it. Good one to have in your toolkit. Here's a cool one that if you get it on sale is a really great emulation of the LA2A as well, called the BX Opto by, this is by Plugin Alliance or Brainworks, I believe. Let's have a listen without, then with. Hello, everybody. Chris Williams here. I am recording a podcast today using no expensive tools, no universal audio interfaces, nothing but a nice microphone and a Tascam DR40 portable field recorder. So again, it's a little more polite than the original LA2A, but it's got a really cool character of its own, and it definitely has that transparency of the Opto style or LA2A compressor where you can't really hear it working, but you can definitely hear what it adds to the vocal, and you miss it when it's gone. Now here's a totally different take on vocal compression by Waves. They've created something which, the whole idea behind a compressor was to bring down the highs and move up the lows. And this does that with a strict volume reduction paradigm. And it's a little bit different than a compressor the way it operates, but the sound is very, very transparent, and it doesn't really add any character, but it does a nice job of straightening out the tone. Have a listen without and then with. Hello, everybody. Chris Williams here. I am recording a podcast today using no expensive tools, no universal audio interfaces, nothing but a nice microphone and a Tascam DR40 portable field recorder. This thing's loaded up with 3 AA batteries, and so you may have noticed that when something gets loud, it brings the volume knob down, and when something is a little too quiet, it pushes it up. And it does it very rapidly and in very small increments, and I've set it up to do it that way. This one takes a little more setup, but it's definitely, because you can have this for about $29 when it goes on sale. It's one you can't afford not to try. I've used this one many times on my podcast, and I liked it because it was very neutral. So neutral that I ended up having to throw like a tape simulator on the end. And I felt why use 2 plugins to achieve what one plugin probably could. So I changed my vocal chain over time, but I used this for a great many podcasts. It was extremely helpful and highly controllable. Another great one by Waves is a classic. This plugin is probably 15 years old or more. It's called the RVox, and I like it because it's a one knob plugin. You just grab this one value called compress and set it how you like it, and you're done. Let's listen without and then with.
Hello, everybody. Chris Williams here. I am recording a podcast today using no expensive tools, no universal audio interfaces, nothing but a nice microphone and a Tascam DR40 portable field recorder. This thing's loaded up with 3 AA batteries, and that's it. And I have my condenser.
So much in the same way that the LA2A was very transparent and yet added some nice roundness and a little bit of punch or aggression. Exact same kind of paradigm. It's not as full and dimensional maybe as some of the plugins we've seen so far, but in a pinch, this is very inexpensive and will definitely do the job. Now, all this is assuming you don't want to use the free one that came with your DAW, by the way, which in the case of Logic and Sonar, that's never a bad way to go. Those are some great plugins that come for free. Moving up in the range a bit, here's one that's gained a good deal of acclaim and for good reason. It is extremely silky and creamy in the bottom end, and you can really hear how it turns the vocal almost liquid. Take a listen, you'll see what I mean.
Hello, everybody. Chris Williams here. I am recording a podcast today using no expensive tools, no universal audio interfaces, nothing but a nice microphone and a Tascam DR40 portable field recorder. This thing's loaded up with 3 AA batteries, and that's it. And I have my condenser mic.
Very smooth and sultry, and you can see how it can make a vocal more intimate and very warm and loungy, perhaps. This isn't one I use on my voice very often, but I love the sound of it. And if you're doing other kinds of audio, like music, for example, I would definitely get this plugin. This thing's great. Here's another one. This one's based on a classic piece of studio hardware called the Distressor, and it's one of the few plugins that's made by the people that made the hardware. So this is made by Empirical Labs. So it's their, authorized emulation, and it sounds quite good. This thing has a character of its own, though. So you may not like it. You can definitely hear it working. And in order to just keep it polite, I had to bring it down to a ratio of 1.5 to 1. So it's barely touching the compressor, and it's still making a bit of a splat. So have a listen. You can certainly hear it working.
Hello, everybody. Chris Williams here. I am recording a podcast today using no expensive tools, no universal audio interfaces, nothing but a nice microphone and
just for fun, let's compare that back to the Fairchild.
Hello, everybody. Chris Williams here. I am recording a podcast today using no expensive tools. Hello, everybody. Chris Williams here. I am recording a podcast today using...
Now, I can hear a little grunge on that, a little bit of hair and less bottom end roundness and a little bit more nasal aggression on it. Nonetheless, if you want a nice radio voice, this would be a great one to use. One of my favorites, definitely by Softtube, is the CL1B, or the TubeTech compressor simulation. I use this one all the time. This one, much like the LA2A and the Fairchild, has got great mid-range aggression, especially once you start using the gain circuit. I find it's got a little bit of dirt and a lot of character to it. Listen to before and after.
Hello, everybody. Chris Williams here. I am recording a podcast today using no expensive tools, no universal audio interfaces, nothing but a nice microphone and a Tascam DR40 portable field recorder.
Isn't that great? You can barely hear it working, if at all, but you can definitely hear a nicely balanced, in your face, very present, and very controlled vocal. This is a really special piece, I think, and it's one of the compressors that I use a lot when I have a very plain Jane signal that needs some tuning up. And then last but not least, also by Softtube, is another one called the TLA 100. This one you can bear, again, very transparent, can't hear it working, but you know that it's doing something. It's adding a nice gentle warmth in the bottom, but none of that aggression. Take a listen before and after.
Hello, everybody. Chris Williams here. I am recording a podcast today using no expensive tools, no universal audio interfaces, nothing but a nice microphone and a Tascam DR40 portable field recorder.
So that one doesn't seem to bring the presence out in the same way that some of the other ones did, but it's almost like it's got this high-end shimmer going on there. And it definitely has a nice, well-rounded bottom end that's not too boomy. It's just right. So, for a compressor that you can't really hear working, but is definitely doing its job, you could also check out the TLA 100. So there's just a range of examples that you can get from $29 to about, I guess, $300 and up. That will do the compression job for you. Now, the secret is, once again, use a fast to medium attack, fast to medium release. Don't use a ratio much more than 2-to-1 to 3-to-1, and make sure that you set the threshold so that the needles aren't really going much past 3 dB of gain reduction. Let's zoom through them. You're going to have to watch carefully as I go through each of these compressors so that you can hear them one more time in comparison to one another. Off we go, starting with the Fairchild, then the LA2A, and then onward.
Hello, everybody. Chris Williams here. I am recording a podcast today using no expensive tools, no universal audio interfaces, nothing but a nice microphone and a Tascam DR40 portable field recorder. This thing's loaded up with 3 AA batteries, and that's it. And I have my condenser microphone plugged straight into the device, no processing, no nothing. So the purpose of this recording is to show you what it can sound like without using any expensive tools. Just really easily available stuff that doesn't put you out a ton of your pocket money, so you can get started podcasting on the cheap and get great results. So what I'll do is just record some short audio for that purpose today. And what I'll do is state the mission statement of my 2 podcasts. So the Badass Agile podcast exists to create an elite tribe of leaders, can take Agile principles and bring them back to their leadership game, and then bring that leadership to their teams, to their clients, to their products, and to the world. The concept is that Agile and great leadership go hand in hand, and that the principles that we learn in Agile are useful beyond the software delivery community. Inherent in that also is that you need more than Agile skills. You need badass skills. You need to become a badass person. You need to become an Agile person, and then you can deliver massive value to your clients. The Fuse Chamber podcasts exists for artists and entrepreneurs and people who in general are looking to change the world. So I want to give you, in many cases, the exact same tools and techniques, but the skills that you need as an artist or entrepreneur.
So there you go. There's a little run through. If you found it was hard to hear the difference, make sure you're listening with a good pair of headphones or a good pair of speakers in a quiet, controlled listening environment. The moral of the story is, use a character or emulation compressor with not a ton of compression on it, but just enough to do its job and add its character, and figure out which ones add the right kind of lift or boom or thump or smack to your voice to make your podcast vocal sound exciting. Whatever sounds good to you is good. So experiment with different ones, grab some demos or whatever you need to do to get these into your system so you can check them out and see for yourself. Guys, thanks for checking out the video, and we will see you in the next one. Hope this helps.